Good morning. We are live, and I mean live. Welcome to another day of Gita Sadhana. And the reason that I'm mentioning, yes, we're live, is because today's focus is on death. And why? Well, death is viewed differently in the Bhagavad Gita, the Mahabharata, and other classic texts than we often view it in the modern West, especially in the United States of America. What do I mean by that? Well, death was not always viewed as an enemy that had to be fought to the bitter end, where we keep people alive artificially, or where we say, someone was. Anyway, I'm sure that many of you have your own idea. Like, just think of death. I think the best way I can say what I was thinking of saying before is that when we have horror movies here in the United States of America and many other places in the world, what's horrible about them? What's terrible about them? Death, right? The people die, and they die gruesomely. Okay, so for us, death is very much linked to fear, and that is not always the case in traditional wisdom literature. For example, in the Kathopanishad, which is one of the great Upanishads, a young boy challenges his father. His father is having a ceremony in which he's giving gifts, but the gifts are crap. Cows that don't give milk, fake jewelry. I may have mentioned this story before because it's one of my favorites, especially because this young boy is confident in himself and says to his dad, "You're giving away crap." His dad says, "Shut up," basically. And the kid says, "Who are you going to give me to? Who are you going to give me to? Who will you give me to as a gift?" And his father finally says, "To death. To death I give you. Get out." And this is important. The boy, instead of being afraid, goes, and approaches death with this attitude of curiosity. He finds a way to make it into death's abode while still wearing his physical self. Death welcomes him, treats him as an honored guest, and agrees to be his teacher. So this boy studies with death and comes back transformed. And since he knows the secret of death, he also knows how to transcend death now. This gives us some valuable clues. Death can be our greatest teacher. How can we transcend death itself? Death can teach us that. But we have to be curious and willing to listen, not just run away, not just turn a blind eye. The way we often turn the blindest eye is to pretend our death is not going to happen. Or it's going to happen someday when we can see it coming and have some control. And think in your experience, is that the case? Not often. If we study and become friends with death, that could be the case for us. But if we resist it, it's just going to show up. So death, if we resist it, we resist some of the greatest teachings of life. Death. So think of the death of someone close to you. What did it bring up? Of course, probably sadness, right? But also did it bring up, if only I'd, a lesson. And maybe that's why it's so hard for us to think about death, is because we think about I could die today. What would I have left undone? What would I regret as I pass on to the next existence? How would those around me suffer because I did not prepare fully or did not tell them how I felt about them fully? Because I'm holding back from living, how would that affect the world? So today in your meditation, I invite you to do Shavasana, the death pose, also known as Mritasana, dead pose. It's also called corpse pose, where you lie down. You can sit, of course, if you want or if space requires. But if you can lie down and think of being dead for 5 minutes, and just think, if you were to die right now, what lesson would you learn? Like, what would you be going, oh, if only, or I really wish I'd, what does death have to teach you so that when he's personified, when he finally comes for you, you'll be okay with it. You'll be able to greet death with curiosity instead of fear. And today's practice, as you may notice, is dedicated to the crew of the Space Shuttle Challenger who perished on this day, 1986. For for the generations before me, often people will be like, I know exactly where I was when JFK was shot. I know exactly where I was when Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. was assassinated. And for my generation, it's I knew where I was when the space shuttle blew up. And I was in high school, was my senior year, and there were TVs set up because a teacher was going into space, right? And then it happened, and it struck me very hard even today. But it's a good lesson. It's a good lesson. And this is a lesson that in the Gita, first Arjun gets desperate and despairing. And the second chapter, right away, Krishna starts teaching him about death and what really learning about death can do for Arjun in life. So let's reflect on that, especially because there was one of the first teachers on the space shuttle, the first teacher, right? School teacher, Christa McAuliffe. Oh, and also near and dear to my heart, Judith Resnick, first Jewish woman in space. And she actually was born not far from here, and there's a school dedicated to her. So to them, and especially to Christa McAuliffe, a great teacher who met death heroically, one would think. They're thought of as heroes now. We'll dedicate this practice. Shall we? Let's do it. Thank you for another day of life. Ooh, rain. Swell. Switching sides. And let's prepare for our meditation. 5 minutes. What, if you died right now, could you learn from that experience? Welcome back to the land of the living. What I learned from that 5 minutes of being dead is that I can stop doing things for 5 minutes and the world will go on. This might be a lesson many of us need to know. And if you got something out of this, please feel free to put it in the comments. I would love to hear about it. Until next time, may you find teachings that benefit you in all aspects of existence.